Okay, here we go. Welcome back for another deep dive.
Hey there.
Today we're wading through a whole stack of recent articles, some notes, basically looking at the latest in crypto and Bitcoin.
Yeah, lots of bits and pieces.
And the idea, as always, is to kind of sift through it all and pull out what you really need to know from this material.
That's the plan. We've got this collection of sources, and honestly, they paint a picture of some pretty interesting shifts happening right now.
Okay.
So we'll focus on those key trends, maybe drill down into what specific companies are doing based on what these articles are reporting.
Right.
And there's definitely a trend that seems to be emerging here, something worth watching.
Intriguing. All right, let's dig in then. What stood out right away from these sources?
Well, the thing that just keeps popping up is this continuation, maybe even an acceleration of companies adding Bitcoin to their balance sheets.
The treasury asset angle.
Exactly. It's showing up as a deliberate strategy.
And the sources give examples, I assume.
Oh, absolutely. Concrete examples. One name that features pretty heavily is Metaplanet.
Metaplanet, right, I saw that.
Yeah, the articles detail this recent, pretty significant purchase they made. Added another, 1,088 Bitcoin?
1,088, wow, that's quite an addition.
It is. And the material says this brings their total holdings now up to 8,888 BTC.
8,888. Huh, quite a number.
It is. And based on the sources, their average cost is sitting around $93,354 per coin.
So that values their current stash at, what, roughly $933 million?
Something like that, yeah. Around $933 million.
I mean, these aren't small bets we're talking about. This looks like a serious corporate treasury strategy, like you said, based on these reports.
Exactly. And it's not just companies adding more Bitcoin. We're also seeing new players jump in.
Oh, like who?
Well, the sources highlight Norwegian block exchange NBX, they call it, based in Norway, obviously.
Okay, MBX.
And the reports say they've actually become the first publicly traded company in Norway to adopt Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset.
First in Norway. Yeah, that's a notable data point from the sources. Yeah. A milestone, really.
Definitely. And then there's also SolarBank mentioned in the material.
SolarBank.
Announcing they're also pursuing a Bitcoin treasury strategy.
So you've got Metaplanet boosting their holdings, NBX is a first mover in Norway, SolarBank joining in. These examples from the articles really do underline that shift, don't they?
They really do.
Companies seem to be looking at Bitcoin as maybe something more than just, a quick trade.
Yeah, the sources seem to frame it that way, especially with companies like Metaplanet holding such huge amounts. You wonder if they see it as maybe a long-term store of value.
Or perhaps a hedge against, wider economic stuff.
Could be. Integrating it right into their core financial planning. It sort of raises the question, implied by these reports, how are companies rethinking just holding cash right now?
Makes sense they'd explore alternatives mentioned in the sources. But okay, these articles weren't just about corporate treasuries, were they? I saw other bits too.
No, definitely not. That trend is significant for sure, but the sources touched on other things too, a broader snapshot.
Like what else?
Well, there were mentions of price predictions. I think Google Gemini's take on Cardano's price was in one source.
Oh, yeah.
Noting ADA was trading near, 0.6965 recently. There was also some analysis on Ethena, potential upward movement discussed in the material based on certain market patterns.
Okay, so market stuff. What about, rules and regulations?
Yep, that came up too. Australia, for instance, rolling out stricter rules for crypto ATMs.
Stricter how?
Setting transaction limits, things like that. The report cited rising scam activity as the reason.
Right, okay. That tracks.
Plus, just general news bits. Things like AI chatbots getting better at handling crypto topics. So yeah, the sources covered that corporate strategy angle, but also the wider ecosystem stuff.
Gotcha. So quite a mix.
Absolutely. And pulling it all together, what these sources really show, I think, especially with Metaplanet's huge stack, NBX breaking ground in Norway, SolarBank following suit.
Yeah.
It's a pretty clear signal, right, that certain businesses are actively integrating crypto assets, specifically Bitcoin, into their kind of established financial structures.
It feels less theoretical now, more like concrete action reported in the material we looked at.
Exactly. It's not just market noise. And the other news points just add context, showing the very landscape where this is happening.
It really does highlight how much that whole conversation around corporate finance, alternative assets, how much it's evolving.
It really is. And, that kind of leads to a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe chew on based on this deep dive into the sources.
Okay.
Given these examples we've just discussed, companies actively adding Bitcoin to their balance sheets, how fundamentally might our traditional understanding of what even is a corporate treasury asset,
Yeah.
how might that change over the next few years?